So you see people at your satsangs from all layers of life. People who work, who don't have any work, people who've lost their parents, people who have 4 beautiful children. Everything.
Yeah, I would say that's a characteristic of the people that visiting me. From all levels of society and experience and profession and yeah.
And do they need a different approach?
No.
This is universal.
Yeah. So there is, of course, this is wonderful that we have the situation that we meet each other alive. So I can tell people the opposite that I tell their neighbors. Because there is no teaching, as I said before. But there is life, and I can look what is the deepest need in someone, and that's often where also is the deepest fear. So being in a position I am actually not in any position. I don't want to put myself in. But if I like to compare myself with something, it could be like a doctor, a surgeon. You need an operation, and I know if I operate you, it will hurt. And how you have to provoke someone to get out of his identification, out of his little narrow-minded world. And sometimes you need to provoke that. And sometimes love does it. Sometimes someone intelligence does it.
Yeah. You seem like a very friendly, nice, warm person. Can you be the mad teacher or the angry teacher who gives someone a slap on the butt or a slap in the face?
You should ask this to the people that visit me and know me well. But that's the point, yeah. Very straight.
Straightforward.
Yeah. Very straight, yeah. I'm not afraid to operate, and if someone can't take it, can't digest it and leave, that's fine for me.
Can't take it.
Yeah, if they cannot take it and they leave because of that, that's completely fine. I don't compromise with it. I'm not a shopkeeper that wants to have people and customers in my shop.
Yeah. It sounds like quite an experience to come and visit you for, like, let's say, an intensive. Or there's no hiding, so I can sit in the back of the room and just with my arms closed take a look at you. Everyone gets his or her share or what he or her has to take.
Yeah, like people tend to have defense mechanisms. So they don't like to participate, but they like to sit on the back row and just see what's going on. But this starts really working when you open yourself, when you make yourself vulnerable, when you dare to review yourself, or actually we say even respect yourself. That means the same. You look again at yourself, and this is a kind of the play that people try to continue their old self, although they say, I want to get rid of it, but that becomes even part of their identity. And I'm not kidding about it. I don't take anything serious except this. And it's always a shock when people experience the true nature and they realize that everything they thought they were not them. And then you experience the nothingness, the emptiness of existence, and that sense of been building up for so many years is in shock. So that's what a master does. He brings you in a shock. It's the death, actually, that visits you. And the challenge is, can you face death? Are you are you daring to die? Do you dare to die to your own mind and all your convictions? Not many people are. And it is intense to go through this. But this is how we meet life. So you die what you are not, what you have been invested in, what you have been believed in, and then your true self comes to the surface and starts being expressive and natural. We don't know how that will be. We don't know what kind of flower is there in the seed. But it is different than what the person was telling you and showing you. So this is probably my function, to help people to see who they truly are, without having any picture how that will be, because that picture will be already in the way.
And it's different for everybody, if I understand you right.
The outcome is different. The realization, what you truly are, consciousness and love, if you use words for that, that's for everyone like this. I say we all have the same design, but the way how we are when this has been revealed is for everyone different. More different than from the levels of personality. Here, from the ego sense, the people think we are unique, but they are not. They imitate everyone, and it's full of conditioned energy. Here, you are unconditioned energy. So you are so creative and unique, you are in your fullest glory. So it's not for everyone the same. The outcome makes you more unique than ever, but the realization, what you truly are, is the same for everyone.
Yeah. So you become the original version of you, how you were meant to be, or
yeah, how you always have been, and always will be.
Yeah. Sounds great, but yeah. You just told us that not many people are willing to die to themselves and to open up, or whatever you want to call it. Does that bother you? Does that make you sad?
No, that has been for millennia like this. If you read scriptures from 5,000 years ago, or the Bible from 2,000 years ago, it has always been like this. And I give everything for this, that people are being inspired and wake up. And I have no attachment to the result of it. I know it works because I see it working with people. I see people come to realize themselves. I see people get rid of their identities and become relaxed in what they always have been. I see it works. I also see the resistance, because there is probably nothing that resists us more than this. Because our whole structure, our whole system survive. We are, the person is the product of the survival energy. And here you stop this energy that is always in charge of surviving. And you stop it. So it's against your structure, but it is needed for your nature. So you have to distinguish what's your nature and what's your structure. And this is difficult for people, because the people are more familiar with the structure than with their nature. So if I operate something on their structure, I'm attacking them, or I take something away from them. All our wars are about this. About identity, about the structure, about political or religious identity, ethnic identity. So here I'm saying that that's so dangerous to live from that identity perspective. First of all, it's not who you truly are. So there's, your tensions are inside. This, in a collective field, we will have tensions with people with other identities. They fight together. Wars are coming. So I see what makes people suffer. And I see they are attached to their suffering and identity. They love to polish up their identity. They like just to feel good, but to operate upon yourself. Sometimes you feel great, sometimes you feel horrible. So you need to be mature to see this. There needs to be an intelligence that knows this is not only about flowers. Sometimes it's bitter. And if you know about biographies of people that have been going through this, you see this is not only flowers. People have been facing their deepest fears. They have been challenged by their environment because families are opposing this. Society can oppose this. But so you need an inner strength that is doubtless to continue. And I was lucky that I had this. And I don't know, I cannot explain, or that I'm so great because it's like this. I can't help it. This is an insight that was there from my early 20s. And okay, I see a lot of suffering and I cannot judge anything about it. When people don't go inside and find out who they are, I don't judge it. I don't judge ignorance. It is there and it can take lifetimes, it can take no time that one comes to realization.
And a couple of 100 years ago, if you were taught this in public, chances were great that you were thrown into prison or put on the...
Yeah, in many countries it's still like this.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Because it's so threatening to the identity of the people, the things they cling on to.
Yeah, the whole structure of society is actually being challenged by this message, by the message of Krishna, the message of Jesus and Muhammad. Not the religions that came out of that. They are already part of the society. That keeps it going. Mm-hmm. That's not anymore rebellion against it. So that's not a danger at all. They play under the same umbrella.
But you come and bring so much freedom. Why not give you the best chair in the room and start listening to someone like you? Mm-hmm. And we still listen to furious leaders and politicians who have the biggest mouth and the strangest, the fastest brain.
Yeah. Because they are closer to your own structure. So they are so much more familiar. They support you in your survival techniques and programs. And it also shows that people are not aware what freedom means. Mm-hmm. They like to have freedom from the sense of I. From that perspective. They like that the personality is free. And I say, no, personality can never be free. You can be free from the personality. That's freedom. Yeah. But then you have nothing in your hands. You have no reference point anymore. So you are empty. You have no center. Yeah. Exactly. There's no center. And we want to have anchors in our life that define us. Yeah. And if someone takes it away, you are ready to fight for it. Because it feels that it's so dangerous.
But still, when I take time and take rest and listen to your words, there is a knowing inside which tells me that it's the truth, that it's true, that you're not selling bullshit to me.
Okay, but you say something important. You say, when I take the time.
Yeah.
When I take the time to consider, to contemplate, to meditate, to go inward. But not everyone does it. This is often heard on the level of opinions and ideas. So people say, I agree, I disagree. And as long as you listen like that, you will not hear what is really being transferred. Mm-hmm. So it's so good to realize that this is always about the unspoken. This is about the wordless reality. And as soon as we make words to describe reality, and we start interpreting them and we start discussing them, then we start to miss. So just to get out of words and we can all say I am, but to realize I am without saying I am is so different. Thinking I am is not I amness. Understanding the truth is not being the truth. But it looks so similar. We are immediately taken just by the words. I understand it. And you say, now I know it. I have heard this. And you pretend to own it. But you don't know, you don't live it. It's not in your cells. It's not in your blood. It's not in your bones. It's not in your consciousness. It's only in your mind. So you need a master bring the unspoken beyond the mind. You have to really bring it in the heart. And you can't really do that with words. You can do it with energy and Shakti and love, of course. But not by methods. Not by help to relax the body. On that level, it does something. It can help you to understand. But this is the same with psychotherapy. You can understand every facet of your youth, what went wrong and what was painful and what has been repressed. But then you know everything, and then it guides you. Yeah. So you have to go deeper than the understanding of it. So the whole energetic tensions that have been created will reset. And that's the operation. I spoke about that's the operation.
And is there such thing as a mind realization or half a realization, or is that just can be thrown away?
Of course, a mind realization is not a realization, and a half realization is not a realization. It appears to be like that, but realization cannot be compromised. It is or it's not. You are awake or you are asleep. And you cannot say, you are close to awakening.
Yeah, it's just like being pregnant. I once heard someone say, you cannot,
no.
You are pregnant or you're not.
Yeah, I'm almost dead, I'm almost pregnant.
Yeah, almost realized, no.
Exactly. The ego loves to say these things because it doesn't have the humility just to say, no, I'm not realized. That's difficult after 20 years of self-discovery and meditation. So then almost, at least to keep your ego a little bit up.
Yeah. Then there are also people who say, well, self-realization is my birthright, so I was born self-realized. I don't have to do anything. I just have to lose the thought that I'm not realized. And then I'm realized. Mm-hmm. Is that all?
Yeah, these are all games.
Yeah.
These are all games. So we talk here about self-realization, and what I can say about it is, I just mentioned before, I amness. And self-realization is that you don't have to exercise yourself anymore to realize I amness. The presence that you are, the consciousness that you are, out of time, is never out of perception anymore. It's continuously there, and you don't have to do anything for that. So I amness is your breath. I amness is every second of your day. And everything comes out of it. But that's the so-called center. We spoke about center. Then, after I amness, after self-realization, there's another jump, quantum jump, possible. And that is what I call enlightenment. So first there's the beingness, pure awareness, but there is still a sense of I in that. or in India they would say Atman. You realize Atman. And it's wonderful because realizing the self, realizing Atman means you are clear, you are not divided anymore, you are not confused, of course, anymore. You are in this emness. And there's another jump, which I call enlightenment, and what in India is being called Paramatman. You transcend even the sense of self. And in some traditions this is called the no-self, the experience of the no-self. And I would describe it that when you are for years deeply embedded in beingness, and not just by your statement, but in your actuality and in your reality, and you live it not only in meditation, but also in relationship with your kids, with having a job, and this was my field. The whole realization and enlightenment came while living here with children and my wife and working in a trauma clinic where I was dealing every day with the traumas that people get in wars, in prisons. And that was my previous job. So I was not naive about this world because my world was fine. I have been seeing so much misery and suffering that this was the working field. The cultivating field was in the midst of these everyday experience of horrible experience of people. And then about enlightenment, when one is so long, let's say, resting in the self, being just the self, in silence something is maturing. And it matures and one is not searching there anymore. One is not anymore waiting for a certain experience. There's no agenda. But then it just can happen without you doing anything, that also the self explodes. The soap bubble of the self is suddenly not anymore. And how we realize that, how we actually experience it, is that love starts radiating. So do of behaving lovely and friendly to people, but when you really enter the self, so the self is already there, but then even you transcend the self, then love starts radiating and call enlightenment. And actually for our human form, for our body, that's intense. Because our body has been in the modus of surviving for so long. So your nervous system, your muscles are all in that direction of, let's say, defensive notions. And enlightenment means there is no one to defend. And there is no center. Even the sense of self in self-realization is a kind of center. And here you lose even that center. And this is called the great surrender or the great death. And that gives such an incredible fulfillment. And it gives the perception that everyone has this design. But most people remain in the seed. The seed never cracks open. And we try to have a good life within the seed consciousness and not while blossoming. And actually, if you realize this, it's so amazed that this is possible. I didn't know this before I met masters. Life was so grey, actually, before that. Although wonderful things could happen, but compared to this, I can now say that's so grey. The holidays, the wonderful concerts.
Did they all give you like a glimpse of this, or is it totally different? Like being on a great show on a holiday. Was it a glimpse of that possibility, or?
it is a different language actually. So we can also use it as an analogy. But glimpses are here in these traditions called satoris. Mm-hmm. It means there are moments or periods, no mind, and where you experience pure presence. This happened to me when I was 13 years old for the first time, out of the blue, not being part of a religious community or so. Just out of the blue. That happened. And what happened is that everything I perceived was incredibly alive. The grass was alive, the water was alive, houses, things alive, and the one that sees everything alive. Everything vibrating, the energy is alive, the sky is alive. And we often talk about imprints that we make when we have traumas, but we do not often talk about imprints that we make when we have satoris, when we have enlightenment experiences. And this was for me that made such a deep imprint that something was imprinted like, never forget this. This is reality. This is as it is. Even when the mind would take back its old position, but this is the in-ground of the mind and of everything. I could never forget this. So as soon as I start listening to the masters, I recognize this not by logic or something or understanding, but from an inner experience. The imprint had been made already. And every time when there comes an imprint in our system, that you the realization of your true nature, it reveals itself, it really resets your old structure of survivalness. And it creates gaps in that system. Yeah. And so you start tasting and smelling the perfume of reality. And so you prepare your whole system to receive this intensity. So your question, why is not everyone looking for this? Because if we meet the truth, our whole body-mind system cannot digest it. We are in shock. We experience death. And we have no education that tells you what it really is. That this is a good sign. Yeah. When you feel scared by coming to a master, for instance, you are on the right way. But don't run away. When you get scared and there's resistance when you meet a master, don't run away, you're on the right place. But no, we humans are different. When there's resistance, we leave him or her. Yeah. That's the old mind.
We get scared.
We get scared.
Totally scared.
Yeah. So when you are on the path, you say, every fear that might show up, I encounter. Everything I encounter live. That's actually a commitment. And I don't care how it looks like. If it looks bitter, I encounter the bitterness. If it looks wonderful, I encounter the love and the wonderfulness. But this is not the attitude of human beings. This is exceptional. We just want to feel good.
It reminds me of a story where there's a man searching for God, and he's searching everywhere, and people point saying, God, he lives on the mountain. The sign on the door, here lives God, and he turns around and walks away. Yeah. Because I want to keep on searching.
Mm-hmm. And this is my experience with human beings. I know people that have been studying Advaita for 30 years, and they have a mental understanding of it. So not an existential understanding. And in satsang with me, they really started to cry and to shout. They say, everything is emptiness. And they were shaking, their whole body was shaking. I'm disappearing, help me. And they were so scared. I said, you have been looking for this for 30 years. You have been reading about this for all those years. Now it starts working. And they were so scared and they never came. And I'm sure they are on the search now. They go to satsangs and they meditate, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't blame that. I don't judge that. Human beings are so afraid for ourselves.
Crazy, isn't it?
It is. It's so absurd. But it's because we identify ourselves more than we could ever imagine to our personality, to our past, to our convictions, everything. And only when you are ready to surrender everything, you might receive what speaks all the time already to you.
It reminds me of another. We were locked up for 20 years in darkness. Suddenly soldiers came, they opened up the cage and they said, come out. They didn't want to come out.
Exactly.
They thought, let me stay
Yeah.
in the darkness.
Yeah. And if you like to see a wonderful movie about this, The Shawshank Redemption is about this. It's not only about a prison where the inmates actually feel attachment to being there, and there's only one man who wants to get out of jail, and everyone thinks he's crazy that he wants to get out of it. But he does. This is exactly how it is in our societies. So it's exceptional that one really wants to leave the prison and enter the unknown. Everyone wants to make his life as comfortable as possible inside of the prison.
Yeah. Even when the door is wide open.
Oh yes, in that movie you can see that one man surprisingly was being released after being there for more than 20 years. He hanged himself within a week. He had no identity outside, he had no job, he didn't know where to go, and he did not understand the world he came in.
Yeah.
Because 20 years is a lot. So much is changing in 20 years. He didn't know how to cope with the reality he was facing.
The real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is our story, that's difficult for us. So to think about it, that's okay. To read about it, fine. To discuss about it, etc. To meditate even about it or so. But when you start really disappearing, dissolving, in reality, the whole system starts to resist. There's attraction, but then when it gets too deep, you go back. And to surpass tendencies is in us. That's quite something. I never say underestimate. We are born enlightened or realized, and you just have to forget about the denial of it and then enjoy. It's great to say. But let's see if your everyday situation shows that saying, is an expression of it. Life is honest.
Yeah. There's no shortcut. You have to go.
I mean, a shortcut, everybody can go from where he is right now in his experience to what he has always has been. That's quite short. I don't know, there's not much distance. So one of the things I say, it's not a teaching, but I'm indicating to people is, come closer. And with coming closer, that can mean come closer to me. But what am I? You don't find here somebody. So I also say when I say come closer, of course, to yourself. Be intimate.
Yeah.
And this intimacy is actually not an accurate word, because closeness is still an expression of distance. So I say take away all the distance that's between you and your reality. And then you fall together with what you are. Then that one you thought you are, or that was conditioned to be someone, dissolves in what you always have been. And enlightenment is the most intimate that exists. There's nothing more intimate, because you enter life, you enter yourself, and you dissolve in it. You don't come back and can say, hey, now I am enlightened, or now I am this or that. You dissolve in it. There's nobody enlightened. Yeah. And then years again, because that system, and then I just look at the body and the nervous system and the mind, is conditioned for millennia. And it needs to reset. So for years and years, that these energies are resetting. And that's intense. It can keep me awake in the night for hours. And this is for everyone unique, how that process goes. Until it is completely embodied. So this is for me so important, that our humanity, the way we function, is not separated from what we are. And that reminds me too of how I was as a young boy. Uncomplicated. Maybe you remember how long a day appeared when you was 5 years old.
Yeah.
It's like eternity. If I looked when I was 6 to the people that was in the 6th class of my school, I actually had something, I will never go there. That is eternity. Another 6 years, I will never get 12 years old. This is so far. One day is already eternity. And then 6 years. What is that? And slowly, slowly, that happens to us. That open, eternal, timeless perception we lose. And we come in patterns. And we live in getting up at a certain time and having the ritual or a television program and our holidays and something of that openness or magic starts to narrow. And then time starts running. The perception of time is so different than years ago. And when people come here closer to their being, closer to what they always have been, it opens again. And they experience their timelessness again. Mm-hmm. They experience that openness and that mystery again. And that's possible also when you are 50 years old.
Age has nothing to do with this.
No, but when we live for 50 years identified, the structure has been so thick, it's like concrete. Yeah. And if you then start to dismantle it, there's so much poison in it. There are so many convictions and tensions in it. And you was identified by the tensions. Yeah. By your unhappiness, by your boredness, by your dullness.
You have a lot invested in them.
Yeah. Also. You have always invested in your identity.
So it's
your education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not, when you're getting older, you're not that willing to give that up because you have so much time invested in it, energy, stories, money.
Exactly. So sometimes people come to me, they say, I'm already for 30 years on this path. And I say, better whisper this. Don't speak out loud. You might say this as to show that you are not a beginner anymore, but if I'll be honest and I see the result of it, maybe you better whisper.
That's nothing to be proud of. No.
Look at the result. If you study mathematics for 30 years and you still don't know the ABC of it, better don't shout out.
Thanks for this great talk, Naropa. We've been talking in time for more than an hour. At last, some practical information. You give retreats in the Netherlands, but also in foreign countries.
Yes, you're right.
Which ones?
Most are in Czech Republic. Retreats are here in Holland, 5-day retreats, the silent retreats, and in Czech Republic, 5-day retreats, silent retreats, and also 10-day retreat. Next week we have one. But I also have, we call it sometimes summer retreats or traveling retreats. Then we are not in silence. We live together for 10 days. We have satsang, but we also swim in the ocean, climb mountains, go to the opera, whatever. Exploring the world, enjoying the world, within and without.
Yeah. All information can be found on naropa.eu.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, my friend.
Yes, so much welcome, Patrick.
Sitting here with, and then that's maybe a difficulty, how to pronounce your name in English.
Yeah.
Jan Kouwhoorn?
Should be John, I think. And Kouwhoorn is a name I have used from when I was 18. Of course, it's a literal translation into English, but in Dutch it's pronounced Jan Koehoorn.
We talked before sometimes in Dutch,
Yeah.
and now for our channel Advaita FM in English. This was inspired by a guy who inspired you, Alexander Smith. He did
Yes.
meetings in the 80s and 90s in Holland, where you saw him,
Mhm.
and he sometimes suddenly started talking in English.
Yeah.
Was that for people sitting in the audience who came from far, or?
Sometimes he would have English guests, and then he would automatically switch to English just in a snap.
Yeah.
No problem at all. And for the Dutch people, most Dutch people speak English fairly well, or at least they can understand it fairly well. So we hardly noticed it ever.
Is there a difference in expressing this message between the different languages? You now started translating a book from English to Dutch.
Yeah. The Dutch language needs more words.
More words.
Yeah. When we translate a book from English to Dutch, I think it's 20% longer. So that's what I'm noticing now. Sometimes I read a sentence, 10 words or so, and there's no short translation in Dutch possible. So then you need to use more words, 15, 20 words sometimes. So that's different. But in terms of what you're trying to say or to transfer to people, it makes no difference at all.
And what is the best way to hear this message? In your own language, or can you say, if you read a book like I Am Dead by Nisargadatta in English, it's better?
I've always read everything in Dutch, and I Am was translated in Dutch by Walter Keers. So to me, Dutch was the only thing that I read. But I think nowadays, most people, especially younger people, speak English perfectly. All movies are in English. Almost all pop music is English. When you go on the internet, almost everything is English. So should be no problem at all, I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a study I read in a psychology magazine that talked about how people get in a different state of mind when they have to talk another language that they're not used to. So could it give more distance between what is said and what you perceive, or?
Yeah, I think when you speak in your native language, you can use all the little nuances that you are used to, and I use puns regularly, woordspelingen in Dutch. And that's, of course, that's much more difficult in another language.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it gets the listener out of his or her comfort zone. So it's more difficult for them to make up things and to pretend to tell something other than what they are really trying to ask or to tell. So I think it depends. I don't know. All my satsangs are in Dutch until now, and that's been 17 years now. So apparently for me, Dutch is the way to go.
Yeah. Never people from England or
No.
Maybe this is a way to get people get to know you. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? What age did you get interested in books from India or?
Well, at first I had problems with breathing, hyperventilation, anxiety attacks.
How old were you then?
23.
About 30 years ago.
23, 24. About 10 years ago, yeah. 30. So the first thing I did was I visited my how you call it in English, doctor? Anyway, physician, yeah. And he told me, well, it's
hyperventilation,
and you can breathe in and out
a paper bag,
or something. Well, that wasn't enough for me. So the first thing I did was get as much information about it as I could, and then I stumbled upon books about yoga and breathing exercises, and so after that I discovered yoga was much more than only breathing exercises and stretch exercises. So I stumbled upon a book by Walter Keers in Dutch, and that was about Jnana Yoga, and then I read I Am That by Nisargadatta. Now, that's how it went.
Yeah.
And eventually I discovered in Holland Alexander Smith. So I rang him up and asked if I could come. And he said, well, that's okay.
If you don't believe in UFOs.
UFOs. Yeah, it's a well-known story in the Netherlands, because I always tell it, but the first thing he asked me was, you're welcome, but only if you're not searching for UFOs or gnomes or no.
Yeah.
Well, so it was very comforting for me that he said so, because I didn't know where I had gotten my... Is it a
cult?
A cult or I didn't know. So that was very reassuring to me.
Yeah. And that was late 80s? Mid 80s?
Late 80s. I think I was 29 and I was born in 62, so
yeah,
you can do the math.
Yeah. How come Alexander's way of teaching appealed so much to you?
Because it was non-conformistic. I never met anyone before who could express everything so directly and with so much humor and so much honesty and integrity. He was in no way... everything he said was straight from the heart. He didn't try to, he was no pleaser or something. If you were not in the right place, then you were sent away directly.
No double agenda.
No double agenda. And it was really the first time that I met someone like that, someone like him, who behaved in a way that I couldn't have predicted.
Yeah.
I had an idea about gurus that they were, I don't know what enlightened behavior is, but I had a kind of picture in my mind about how that would look, and of course it was completely different with him.
Yeah, you didn't visit his meetings very long. You've been there for
3 months.
3 months.
3 months.
And was there a moment that he came to you and said, Jan, you're free to go, you've seen what you have to see, you've heard what you have to hear?
Oh, no.
No?
No, didn't. He always said, the only one who can tell if he or her has seen it are you, yourself. So you didn't have to ask him if you had seen it, or you didn't have to... There was no confirmation needed from him. You just know, and then you go.
But how do you know?
It's very... it's not in a way that people are used to what they say, I know something. Usually they mean by memory. I can recall it, so I know. I know where I live. I know the name of my children. I can recall it. But when you're in love, for example, and I would ask you, how do you know? Then there's not... you cannot say, oh, I remember that I am in love. It's not very wise to say that to your woman. Yeah. I think I know that I love you.
You love someone or you don't?
You just know.
Yeah.
You just know. So how is not applicable. Why is not applicable. You just know.
Yeah.
And maybe it's more because of the absence of a lot of things than the presence of some things.
What did fall away? Questions?
Questions fall away. All cramps about who I was, what I needed to become, what I should undertake. All that was blown out of my system. Is not really the right word. It's more like fade out or something. So I didn't see thunder and lightning or all those things that I just experienced. Kind of a fade out in which all those things disappeared.
And people in your family, did they see a change in you? Did you become more lovable? Did you become more, or all things in the world?
No.
Still the same.
I kept it secret for my family and
they knew
friends.
But they knew you were visiting Alexander.
No.
Okay.
No, it's not something that I thought of advertising to anyone.
Is that maybe an advice for the people who are listening or watching this?
Well,
keep this to yourself.
The danger is in Advaita there's a danger that you look at someone who is called an enlightened being or a realized master or something. You hear his or her story, and then you think, okay, so that's the way to go.
I have to become like him.
I have to become. So it's not a prerequisite that you keep it to yourself. But when people ask me, and I say, the danger is if you tell everyone about it, that people start asking, and then you are going to explain something that you really do not know yet, and that's
and that's what's going on.
That's what's going on anywhere on the internet. Everyone can copy paste. So it's no problem at all posting things online and pretending to know things that you really don't. So for me, it was absolutely no question that I was going to tell anyone anything about Advaita until I knew what it was for myself. And there is that knowing again. Remembering Advaita is very easy. Quoting Advaita masters, very easy. But knowing, doubtlessly, for yourself, that's a completely other story. I've never understood why people would do that. It never occurred to me to say anything about Advaita before I had the story clear for myself.
In my case and other cases I know, by this message of freedom, that you cannot stop talking about it. And I remember the first year I heard about it, I said, this has to be, you have to tell everybody at 8 o'clock. The first item on the
and then
journal.
you become a missionary or something.
But you get back from that because you know that there are not so much people interested in this.
Nobody gives a damn.
No, they think, well, what you talk? Oh yeah, nice. I'll look into that later. I started sending these little books by Hans Laurentius. I found it on the web everywhere, and people.
And the result is that you lose your friends and you don't get invited to parties anymore.
They think he's getting completely nuts.
No, I was very hesitant even after the story became clear to me. There was no doubt in my mind about not giving satsang. It was only after I heard that Alexander died that something started to happen on that front. I made a small web page about what Advaita was. So I started getting reactions and emails and invitations, and that's how it's.
When Alexander passed away.
98.
And is this something you can know through the internet, or is it necessary to see you in person or go to a living satsang or?
It's absolutely necessary to see a living person, and then you should go to me. That's absolutely.
And bring all your money. No,
it's not necessary. But my metaphor is always, it's not necessary that you use a car to get from Amsterdam to
Apeldoorn.
It's not necessary, only it's quicker.
Yeah.
So
Can you do this on your own?
yes, you can. There are examples of that.
By-
Ramana never visited
master.
any master. Your friend Nikki never visited any master, never searched for anything, as I understood.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but it's more. It's rare. You don't see it often. So my advice is, if you can find someone where you have that connection, it's the same wavelength, then you should stay there.
And how do I know if you are my guru?
Same story. First time I visited Alexander, I was scared shitless, but there was no doubt that he was my master.
And you couldn't reproduce thoughts that guaranteed you that knowing again.
I knew.
Yeah. Like
I knew.
when you see a beautiful woman, you know this is the one I
Keep
want
away from her.
or I don't want to get in touch with her. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is a word in the Sanskrit language for this kind of knowing. We don't have that in Dutch.
What's that word?
In Sanskrit, it's jnana. You have jnana, which is knowledge without memory, okay? Which is identical to awareness. You just see, you notice things without thinking, translations, analyzing, and so on. That's a different word. It's immediate. You can't switch it on or switch it off. It's there, always. The other knowing is called ajnana in Sanskrit, with the A prepended. Is often denial in that language, like in Dutch. So